Hello, everybody. I'm Salome. My name is Salome Apkhazishvili. I'm a graduate student at USI, Master of Art in Communication. And today I will present my biggest project I've worked so far because this is my final semester and I'm graduating and I'm almost done with my master thesis. And this is my pleasure to present the results during this colloquium since I have not presented it to anybody so far, and I'm really excited to share this with you during this colloquium. Thesis advisor for this project is Dr. Chad Tu from the Communication Department in Liberal Arts College, and I'm really grateful for him for the guidance he gave to me and the questions he asked. The topic media literacy education is very important to me since I moved to the United States because the reason why I applied for Fulbright scholarship, why I came to the States was developing my understanding of media literacy education and become media literacy advocate in future. And I'm really privileged that I got this chance and I'm here and I'm learning a lot in terms of media literacy education, even though a lot of courses and program itself, the communication program didn't provide a lot of details in media literacy education. I had opportunity to work on papers. I had an opportunity to apply for travel grants from the graduate students department. And I went to conferences. You see some pictures on slides right now, which represents my participation in statewide and country-wide conferences. I also want to share this story and some details about my experience. Last semester, fall 2019, was very important for me and for USI history because with Professor Erin Gibson, she is a journalist instructor at USI. We both brought first time in USI history when organized Media Literacy Week, and I'm really grateful that I brought this experience on USI campus, and we kind of made difference in terms of initiating discussions and conversations about media literacy education on campus. So the picture you see on the right side of the slide, it's me and Professor Erin Gibson. We both organized this week-long event related to media literacy. So it means that I've been always into the media literacy advocacy and education, and these projects I'm about to present today, this is continuation of my commitment and my engagement in this field. As you already noticed in my title, I tried to make it simple and more narrow in terms of focus of media literacy education, and I chose smartphone as a problematic device in my research because you see every day, you see numbers, right? So this represent Pew Research Center and the statistics that comes from the Pew Research Center, and it shows that smartphone becomes important part of our everyday life. According to the Pew Research statistics in the US, cell phone ownership is 96%, and most of these cell phones are smartphones, which is 35% more than in 2011. So it means that the penetration of smartphone in everyday culture is increasing, and a lot of people, including generation Boomers and Generation X and Millennials and Gen Z, all of them own smartphone. This is an interesting comparison because I think that the population, so this comes from, again, from Statista, which is another credible source in terms of statistics, and it shows that the number of population in the United States, according to 2020, and also smartphone ownership rates. And we see that not everybody, but almost everybody in the United States owns smartphone. So it means that smartphone is something a lot of people carry in their pocket and in their hands, and we need to be more, not careful, I wouldn't say careful, but we need to acknowledge and be aware of what we have in our pocket and in our hands. I need to start explaining some important concepts and terms before I move on and talk about my theory, methodology, and results. Three major concepts which is important for this presentation. This is media literacy, the term media literacy, which is not new term. It has been emerged since it was emerged in 70s when Aspen Institute of Media Education, they coined this term, but then the Center for Media Literacy Education, they decided that this was not relevant to nowadays challenges, to current challenges, and they changed and enriched the concept of media literacy, which means that analyzing, evaluating, creating, and participating with messages in a variety of forms. And it's not excluded by the TV because this is the biggest critique related to media literacy concept nowadays, because sometimes media literacy is perceived in the context of TV and radio and traditional media, while today most of the population are surrounded by absolutely different media, right? So it's internet, it's applications, smartphones. So even this definition, which you see on the slide, it's not almost relevant, but this is the newest we have nowadays. What's a smartphone? It seems like it's easy to know what smartphone is, but it's important to define that smartphone is a cell phone that includes additional software functions like email, internet browser, and etc. And this definition comes from Merriam-Webster dictionary. Collaboration. Collaboration refers to an interaction between persons having equal statuses and rights in the interaction who are not necessarily equal in other respects. What's the goal of my research and this project? My goal is to identify the circumstances in which the smartphone becomes a collaborative tool for learning about technologies and learning in general. So this is the biggest goal I have into my mind since I started working on this project. Okay. As for theories and major theoretical foundations that applies to my research project, there are a lot of theoretical concepts, but I decided to bring two of them here because of the limited time resources. Parental mediation model. This model has been existed in our life, in our media research since 1980s when TV was a problematic media. And again, this is the biggest critique related to parental mediation model because usually it was created, it's discussed in a TV context, and nowadays we have smartphone. Like TV is, how to say that, we access to TV through our smartphone. So we have different challenges, and a lot of critics and media scholars, they always emphasize that this model does not work in today's context. But it was created in 1980s. This is a fact. Parental mediation model, it's based on three theories, the three branch of theories: media affects, information processing, and interpersonal communications. And it explains how interpersonal communication between parents and children reduces the negative effects of media on children. This is a simple interaction between parents and children, again, to reduce harm and increase benefits coming from media. Family communication. This is traditional model in media studies and communications and how families and children and parents use technologies. But I decided to bring family communication types, which were coined and first brought into research by a lot of research scholars. But first of all, I will say here that I brought the family communication types here because I think that there is a connection between family communication and family types and parental mediation theory. You see that 4 family communication types exist nowadays: protective, consensual, laissez-faire, and pluralistic. So these 4 forms of family types is strongly related to the approach parents take when it comes to technology mediation, and I will talk about this a little bit later. Research questions I have and I had in my mind. you see on the screen that I'm interested in to know what is the role of collaboration between parents and children when it comes to smartphone use. Also, to what extent does the parental mediation theory requires to be refined to answer the digital parenting challenges, and how do parents and kids build the interpersonal communication with their kids over smartphone mediation. There is some typo here, so I will correct mistake right now. So how do parents and kids build the interpersonal communication when it comes to smartphone use? This would be correct formulation of my research question. Research methodology I used was very relevant to my research goal, since I was interested in to know the experience parents have or they engage or they use. So when it comes to technology mediation, I decided to use qualitative methodology, more specifically in-depth interviews. So I recruited 11 parents of 10-17 years old teenagers, and these parents usually are not usually, most of the parents, all of the parents are based, they live in Evansville because I had face-to-face interviews. It's important to note that my research was approved by the USI Institutional Review Board in December 2019, and only after that I started working on my actual research. Parents were recruited by public calls through Facebook, email, word of mouth, and also by snowballing. Interview period, so interviews lasted almost a month in February, so I devoted the whole February to my interviews, and I had this conversation today with my advisor. He told me how lucky I am because I kind of finished all my interviews by the end of February. Otherwise, I would not be able to do these interviews face-to-face in this current situation. Each interview lasted for around 40 or 90 minutes, which was quite enough to get the idea of their experience. I had 11 parents, 2 males and 9 females. I was trying really hard to have very diverse participants in my research, and you see that I have 1 Latina parents, 2 African American parents, 7 white American, and 1 Asian American parent. Age groups, and I specifically decided to bring here the idea of millennial and Generation X, because I think that this is very important when it comes to technology use. So I had 2 millennials and 9 Generation X representative. Education level. I had mostly really well-educated, highly educated parents. 4 of them have doctorate degree, 1 of them has master's degree, 2 of them has bachelor's degree, 1 of them has associate degree, and 2 parents are high school graduate. The number of children they have, it varies from 1 to 4. More qualitative results I have here. So parents, majority of parents, they say that 12 is the right age to have first smartphone. I was trying to get the idea why they think that 12 years old teenager is wise enough to handle technology or smartphone challenge, but they usually say that this is a time when they show that they are credible, that they show responsibility, and we decided to buy a smartphone for them. But they also mentioned that this is a time and age when teenager moved to more like really busy lifestyle. So they started going outside, they started engaging in different extracurricular activities. So it means that there is a high necessity to be informed in terms of parents. So they want to know what their children are doing, where they are, and they think that this is a time when they need a smartphone. The amount of smart technologies in each household varies from 7 to 15, and it includes iPads, it It includes Nintendo Switch, it includes smart technologies and smartphones, of course, smart TVs, and other smart technologies. Usually, iPhone seems very popular among my participants. iPhone, they think that it's more trustworthy. Also, important details here. Out of 11 households I interviewed, in 9 cases, teens own their own smartphone. I'm moving on again, the qualitative results, and I would say that what's major, the general pattern I've noticed in this research is that each household is different. Each household has its own culture. Like every individual, every child is different, right? So we always hear this idea that everyone is different, right? We are individuals and we are different from each other. It's very relevant to the parental mediation theory because each household has its own approach and its own argument why they apply this specific type of mediation strategy. The age of smartphone ownership is getting younger. This is very important because it seems like peer and social pressure is a key factor here, because a lot of parents say that one day, so the kids come to me and they say, my older brother already has the smartphone, so why I don't have it. So this is a moment when they decide, okay, they feel like they are a little behind and they go and buy a smartphone for them. Also, this pressure comes from school where if they don't have a smartphone, they feel like they are left behind. So peer pressure and social pressure works really well in terms of smartphone ownership, and it causes, it causes the situation when parents are forced to buy smartphone in early age. Boys are more resistant to restrictions. Very interesting finding here is that boys are more resistant to restrictions, while girls are relatively obedient. Another gender factor here is that boys are using smartphone mostly for gaming, for silly YouTube videos, and this is not my adjective I'm using here. Some of the parents brought this adjective here, and I just brought it from their responses. So they say that boys using their smartphone for silly YouTube videos, while girls go and check how to do videos. For example, if they want to create cake, or they bake cake, or if they want to make some bracelets or some jewelry, they go to YouTube and they check how to make this. And this is some general patterns in girl. Another interesting finding I've noticed in my research is that usually in each household, either mother or father is a technology gatekeeper. I have like 0 cases when parents work together. Usually one of them have this trust that, okay, he or she is technology, a tech-savvy person here. As you know, usually the research papers and the big research projects work according to this structure. So I will have 4 major categories and sub-chapters in my paper. I'm not able to describe all of the chapters in details, but these are the working names of my categories. First category is that usually, based on the responses I get from the interviews, parents say that having a smartphone means that being in love-hate relationship with smartphones, which describes the concerns and benefits related to smartphone ownership. Another subchapter is about smartphone mediation strategy. I already discussed parental mediation strategies several minutes ago, but in this chapter, in this subchapter, I will focus on parental control applications and rules and restrictions they apply to smartphones. Another chapter I will bring in my research project will be about collaborative mode of using smartphone. And the final chapter is what parents want to know more about smartphone to be more confident in terms of parental mediation. As I said, I won't go to details since I'm very limited in time, but I will talk about the biggest points that revealed in my research. Biggest fear parents mention when it comes to smartphone ownership is hidden threat. And Kevin, who is a father of 4 children, and he represents Generation X, he says that back 90s or 80s, somehow parents knew that if you let your children outside, you know that there might be a threat. And this threat was somehow more visible comparing to nowadays because all these threats are gathered in smartphone behind screen and you cannot really tracked, right? You cannot really detect this threat. So this is the biggest fear parents say, that something is hidden, something is unknown, and something is beyond my control as a parent. This is the biggest concern they have. Another concern is privacy. And it seems like older generation, they are more, they worry about privacy more than young generation. And even though smartphone is very private device because parent and children, they rarely share the same smartphone. They have their own smartphone. Notwithstanding this fact, smartphone is very susceptible and very vulnerable in terms of private information. And parents talk about this issue as well in my research. But at the same time, they say that this is love-hate relationship. It's not only about concerns, it's also benefits. Education and being informed and keeping like this track of their children's everyday life, this is the biggest benefit they think smartphone has and smartphone brings. And also access to, the unlimited sources of education children have nowadays. This is the biggest benefit. As for smartphone mediation strategy, it's obvious that smartphone parents usually prefer to have restrictive and active mediation strategies simultaneously, which means that they, even though they have some restrictions and rules regarding smartphone use, they also apply active mediation, which means that they talk to their kids before they set some rules. In most cases, of course, but of course, I also had parent who says that there is no need to discuss it because parents know more and children should follow what parents say. This is more like a tough for an approach of parental mediation. Important rule parents mention in my research project is that smartphones are never allowed in bedroom. They usually stay in living room when they go to bed. And also smartphones are not allowed in at dinner table. Smartphone is only accessible and allowed after the house chores and homework is done. Smartphone is something that need to be earned, so you need to do something to get access to the smartphone. That's how rule works in terms of smartphone usage. When it comes to parental mediation strategies, one of the parent mentioned Bitdefender, which is one of the really expensive internet security application or software. I would say software. There are some other settings parents talk about, and I will have this defending and controlling application and softwares in my paper. They have some restrictions in terms of social media use. And what's the major thesis here is that parents say that if you build really good relationship with your parent, with your kid, then you can have a trust. You can have trust, and so good relationship and trust is predicated to the mediation strategy. Another topic I want to discuss here is that collaboration, right? So this is a major idea. This is a major idea and my major focus in this research. And I specifically asked parents what kind of activities they have when it comes to smartphone use. For example, if there are any games or applications they use together. And I was really not surprised, but I feel like I get understanding of a lot of applications that parent and children use together. For example, Live 360, which tracks the location. For example, if parents go to Walmart, children always know that their parents are in Walmart. They can always reach them and tell, hey, I need to bring this. If you can do that for me, this would be great. So location track services, which is something they use together. One of the parents mentioned this. iMessaging games like Heads Up, Cup Pong, Trivia Crack. These are the games usually the parents and children play together through their smartphone. Another important fact that is revealed through my research is that parents and children, they are friends on social media. For example, one of the parents I interviewed, she mentioned that she decided that to set up her what's the social media Snapchat account together with her kids, just to be able to control what her son was doing there, what her daughter was doing there. So it was easier for her to track and to know what the social media app is all about. And also collaborative use is revealed when they share same playlist on Spotify, on iMusic, which again gives them access to each other's mood, to each other's taste in music, and this is also something that is done collaboratively. Smartphone parenting. This is a question I asked to parents by the end of interview, and the question sounds like, what is the word or phrase you would use to describe smartphone parenting nowadays? And they say, this is tough, this is complicated, this is challenging, this is harder than earning PhD. There is a quote that comes from the research paper I used for my theoretical background in paper, and it, again, this is an evidence that nowadays parenting is emotional project. And the researchers I referred to in my research, they coined this term as like transcendental parenting, which describes that parenting nowadays is not easy. And here we go. I already approached to conclusion, and I would say that I already mentioned major ideas and theses in my presentation, but to conclude, I would say that rulemaking and conversation does not exclude each other. So there is a necessity of refining the parental mediation model in relation to smartphone age. And what I mean in this sentence, usually parental mediation model, which was created in 1970s, it has three separate mediation model, right? But in these interviews, which I conducted, it revealed that sometimes there is no separation between restrictions and active mediation. Restrictions and conversation does not exclude each other. So there might be the necessity to bring different approach in parental mediation theory. Co-using, which is part also the parental mediation theory, it's becoming more popular in the smartphone context because I already mentioned the applications they use together. Another problematic point that has been revealed through my research is that parents themselves, they admit that they have addictive behavior. So the validity and credibility of parental mediation is questionable. They are not secure themselves from the addictive behaviors and threats that exist in smartphone and behind screens. Good thing is that smartphone seems a promising device for collaboration that benefits not only one generation, but different generation. The key foundation for smartphone mediation strategy, like all the technology mediation strategy, is trust and credibility that is part of the relationship between parent and child. So family communication, parent-child communication is a key foundation for any technology foundation, which is part of early discussion in technology mediation, but in smartphone case, this is another evidence, and that in smartphone mediation also requires good relationship between parent and child. And final point, comparing to other smart devices, smartphone seems more dangerous device that needs to be earned rather than given easily. That's what parents say in my interviews. And before I say thank you to everybody who listened to my presentation, I want to mention important limitations which existed in my research. Language and cultural barriers. As you may already noticed, English is not my native language, and all of my participants, most of them, they were native speakers. 9 of them were native speakers, so there might be some misunderstanding from my side or from their side when I was asking questions during an hour-long interview, so there might be some misunderstanding and some errors because of language and cultural barriers. Another important limitations was financial and time resources, and also I would say that demography is not really diverse of my research, so participants are mostly white, educated, and middle class representatives. 10 out of 11 represent married families, and this makes a lot of difference, because I know and I met some families who are less privileged families, and they have relatively different situation in their families when it comes to technology and smartphone mediation. So just because I didn't have enough time resources and financial resources, I just did not have time to talk to all of them, but it seems like this might become part of my future research, maybe for my PhD research. Anyways, thank you so much. This is the references I used for this presentation. Of course, my actual research paper and research project references is really long. And in case of interest, you can always reach out, you can always ask questions related to these specific presentations, but related to my research paper and project in general, or media literacy education. You have my emails on the screen, and I would be happy to address your questions. Thank you so much. I'm really sorry for a long presentation. I hope it was interesting. Please be safe, stay calm, and let's hope that USI will be back soon. Thank you.